Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Sports Speak. Hope you're doing well. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
I'm Tim Moore.
Well, the MLB trade deadline in the books. It was really one for the ages. A lot went down, especially in those final few minutes on Monday. We'll get to all of that and also going to talk some more NFL, get back to our Giants versus Eagles debate because there is football tonight. The Hall of Fame game between the Jaguars and the Raiders, so the NFL season unofficially begins tonight in Canton, but we'll get back to it with the Giants and Eagles, look at their schedules, and determine what record these two teams will finish with. But Tim, let's start with the deadline. And I'll start with this. I'm going to count down my top 5 teams I saw from this deadline in terms of what they did and the moves they made. Number 1, I don't think there's much question. The San Diego Padres, Juan Soto, Josh Bell. How about Brandon Drury hitting a grand slam in his first at bat as a Padre? You add Josh Hader to that pen. They gave up a lot, but not too much. And I really liked how with the Hader trade, they didn't give up any key prospects. They gave up some major leaguers, but were ultimately able to save the prospects to get Soto and Bell. So I got the Padres at 1. Number 2, I like the Houston Astros, the moves they made. Trey Mancini, adding him in, Christian Vasquez as a catcher, 2 really strong moves for a Houston team that had very few holes to fill, but of course are probably going to be getting down with the Yankees in October, and that really bolsters their opportunity, especially since they brought in 2 players who are familiar with the Yankees and have both played in the AL East for 5+ years. Third, if the Yankees had not made that Jordan Montgomery trade, they would be number 3 in my mind. But I'm going to put the Twins at 3 only because they brought in 2 really solid starting pitchers. I really like Tyler Mahle, and you get Jorge Lopez from the Orioles, one of the best closers in baseball this year, an all-star, a seasoned vet. So I put Minnesota at 3. The Yankees, I'm still going to put them at 4 because they made changes and made positive changes and fixed the things they needed to fix. Joey Gallo is gone. Benintendi is in. You added Effers to that bullpen. Maybe Harrison Bader will be an impact player in September. Overall, I like the moves the Yankees made. Aside from that Montgomery deal, which was a little weird, kind of hurt their starting pitching depth. And number 5, I like the St. Louis Cardinals. Very underrated. Their offense is good, but they were able to hold on to the bulk of their young talent because this is a Cardinals team that's going to be good for a long time. They want to win that NL Central. It's very possible only one team from the Central makes the postseason this year. They want to be the ones. And adding Jordan Montgomery, Jose Quintana, Chris Stratton, all 3 of them who I believe have at least some experience pitching in the postseason, really lengthens their starting rotation, a rotation that was really lacking. And when you look at the National League between the Mets having DeGrom and Scherzer, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Braves, there are loaded starting rotations. The Cardinals needed to rival that to be contenders, and I think they really helped their chances. So that's my top 5. A couple of teams that I'll just add that maybe didn't do so well. I didn't really understand what the Red Sox were doing. They bought some, they sold some, they were a little topsy-turvy. As a Mets fan, I would have liked a little bit more, but in the end, I think they were a little frazzled by what they did last year. Of course, with Javier Baez, that did not work out. And all 4 of the moves that they made, I think, moved them in a positive direction. Their bench is much better than it was 2 weeks ago. I know Michael Givens got knocked around in his first outing yesterday, but I think he'll be an impact player. They also have Trevor May back. And hey, Jacob deGrom is healthy. Braves, I'm a little surprised they didn't do that much. They brought in Robbie Grossman, but didn't add much pitching. They're really relying on this team from the World Series last year, but they have more injuries again, just like they did last season. So that's where I stand with that. Tim, over to you. What are some of your takeaways from this trade deadline? Some teams that really hit it big and other teams that simply didn't do enough.
Well, from a personal standpoint, I'll first start like this. The New York Yankees are simply a disappointing franchise. And I know that's going to say whatever, but listen, I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I'm tired about hearing about the money. I'm tired about hearing about cap. The Yankees have the best record in the American League, and this team is worthy of being capable of making a deadline move to win a World Series. You want to talk about money, shelling out in terms of not being realistic. I'm tired of hearing that Juan Soto is unrealistic, considering what San Diego gave up for Juan Soto, the Yankees could have turned around and gave away. For Juan Soto, I would have been more than willing to give away Anthony Volpe. I would have been more than willing to give away Jason Dominguez. I would have been more than willing to even give them another top five prospect on top of that if it meant getting one of baseball's future and already active stars. Juan Soto is only 23, and I understand the component of pay, but look at San Diego. Think about this for a second. They're going to have to pay Juan Soto, right? They already have paid Manny Machado. They have paid Fernando Tatis, who still hasn't played a game this year, might I add. Even though he was my MVP prediction, that team still doesn't have their shortstop and can only get better. Of course, they've paid pitching, they've paid ways around. And listen, for San Diego, I'll laugh in this regard. Of course, they get Josh Bell along the trade. The only thing I hope for the Padres is that it doesn't turn out like it did the last three times. I always think about the San Diego Padres super team. Remember going all the way back to when they brought in the Uptons and Matt Kemp, or even most recently 2 years ago where they brought in absolutely what should have been dominant pitching staff. You had Yu Darvish, and I believe even then they still traded for Blake Snell right after the Cy Young. So you look at that team and all the capabilities, of course, bringing Manny Machado, you thought that team was capable of winning a World Series, and unfortunately didn't live up to the expectations. And while you still have some pieces there, I still think this team is going to compete with the Dodgers. I think the story now is going to be who's better, the Dodgers or simply the Padres. And on paper, of course, I think it's very easy to argue the Padres. But the one thing the Dodgers still always have over the Padres is going to be experience. And I'm very intrigued on what the Dodgers can do, because the Dodgers really went under the radar this deadline. Their biggest move, in my opinion, was trading for Joey Gallo, which isn't really much of a move at all. And that overall is going to be interesting. When I go to my top five, I agree with you. San Diego, easily number one. I don't think there's a question without a doubt. You got an above 300 hitting first baseman who can mix power and switch hit, and you turn around and get a once-in-a-generation player, Juan Soto. That is a done deal. And unfortunately for the Nationals, and if you're a Nationals fan, I'd be really angry considering what your team just was 2-3 seasons ago, and now you have completely fallen apart. Number two, I also agree. I have the Houston Astros. A little bit disappointed, though, that they didn't get Wilson Contreras. I really thought that they were going to make a deal with the Cubs, but the Cubs, also, you talk about awkward, just like Boston, opted to keep a lot of players like Ian Happ as well, in-house, but then trade away a couple of their bullpen pieces. To me, their process of elimination doesn't make sense, but it's interesting because I feel like the Cubs are in a rebuild and would have made sense too. Number three, I'm actually going to go with the team you didn't bring in your top five, which I'm surprised. I'm going to go with the Seattle Mariners. I think they proved the point yesterday, turning around, getting Luis Castillo, dominating the New York Yankees, and turning around and slowly making, great steps. Again, the Seattle Mariners aren't going to win a World Series now. Let's be honest. But every year they're slowly but steadily getting better. And even right now, I know they have injuries. So, for example, the J-Rod, and they're going to have to turn around and slowly find a little bit more of an offensive presence consistently. But I really love that move for Seattle. I feel they not only solidified themselves a pitching ace, but the fact that they also found themselves a little bit more depth that they can work with. Not making them a title contender, but it's a good first step really for the future, and a big thing for them trying to aim towards a wild card run, because let's be honest, they're not catching Houston in that AL West with the way things are all working out. Number four, it's a little bit tough for me because I feel like really I want to say the Yankees, but I really can't. I'll go with the Cardinals, who was your number five, because overall, Jordan Montgomery, big addition for them. And the big thing as well, Eddie, is that one thing the Cardinals do so well, and I don't think people ever realize this. Of course, yeah, they've had Adam Wainwright there for years, but this team just brings in a lot of, I don't want to say top star pitching because their offense has a bunch of top stars. You have Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and so on, where this team has the power in the bats. But the big thing this rotation has, for the most part, and what's led the Cardinals to success in past seasons, remember when they went on all these playoff runs, is because of the fact that they just have solid complementary starting pitching. Yeah, they don't have exactly that ace that's going to turn around and give you, a mid 1 or 2 ERA like Jacob deGrom does, but you have guys that are mid to low 3 ERAs, and that's the big thing I loved about Jordan Montgomery that I really argued with Eddie with Raheel about. Listen, I know we turned around and got Frankie Montas, and he's having a great year, yet again, and really backing up for what was a not a Cy Young run last year, but at least being in the conversation. But my thing is, Jordan Montgomery throughout his entire career, with the exception of the pandemic season and the season before when he was injured, he is always a mid 3 ERA guy. You can rely on Jordan Montgomery to be consistent. And I'd even argue, compared to Jameson Taillon or even Garrett Cole, I could trust that Jordan Montgomery would have capability of at least doing something decent in a playoff game for the New York Yankees. Not saying that, he's going to dominate, but he can give you complimentary baseball. So I think the Cardinals really got themselves a solid pitcher. And I'm sure we'll see him in the postseason at some point. And oh, by the way, just like how the Yankees missed out on Luis Castillo and they're feeling a little bit bitter about that, they're going to feel real bitter when Jordan Montgomery is likely to start the series, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow for St. Louis. So that will be interesting as well. And the last one, I'll go with the Yankees just because they still made moves. But again, needle mover. Needle mover. I'm going to use that term. I know that term's used a lot in wrestling, but for the Yankees, Andrew Benintendi, listen, very solid player. Do not get me wrong. But in my opinion, he's a fluke 300 hitter. He has some good bat on ball, but if you look throughout his career, mid 270, 260, or you go through the slump when he first joined Kansas City, I don't feel like Andrew Benintendi's a 300 hitter. And the big thing is he doesn't flash power. And I'm not saying the Yankees need power, but the Yankees have survived around big swings, big at-bats. While Andrew Benintendi works walks, which is great, he only has one hit still since joining the New York Yankees. I believe he's like 1 for 17, which is absolutely horrendous. And while sure, he's worked 8-9 walks, what does that matter when you're not getting consistent production around? The guys like DJ LeMahieu, what makes them so good is that they can work counts, work walks, and still hit for complimentary power, but get on base. That's why I love guys like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. But you can't have 3 IKFs in a batting lineup for the New York Yankees and not at least bat them in order to get runners on base. Otherwise, that would make sense. But the Yankees like to spread people around the lineup. And Andrew Benintendi, if you would have said 2-3 seasons ago, would have been a big deadline piece. The answer is no, because the fact of the matter is Andrew Benintendi isn't Juan Soto. He isn't Shohei Ohtani either, which is someone I wish the New York Yankees were able to fully pursue. Unfortunately for LA, that was not the case. But the Yankees turn around and get Montas. Montas isn't an ace. Let's be honest, he's not better than Garrett Cole. And Garrett Cole hasn't been good of late either, and you can't trust him in the postseason. And then the Montgomery trade doesn't make sense. And yeah, the Yankees trade away Joey Gallo. That's great. But I need an outfielder that can start every day over Aaron Hicks. Every day. Aaron Hicks isn't the answer. I would absolutely have loved an outfield that had Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Andrew Benintendi, and then you complement a Shohei Ohtani into the lineup. I would have even have loved if they turned around and got a first baseman. Why did they try to go for Josh Bell rather than having San Diego turn around and get both Soto and Bell? You can utilize Anthony Rizzo at DH, have Bell play first, and then you flip-flop between them and Stanton. But the Yankees made under the radar moves. While they're high profile for this season, I don't see any of them being World Series pieces. And that's the fact of the matter. And they haven't showed me anything that's changed momentum. The Yankees have played horrible since the All-Star break. And again, will they win a World Series? We'll see. Right now, they still have the best record in AL, but they are not the best team in baseball. And MLB, by the way, released power rankings, Eddie. They have the Yankees number one, the Dodgers number two. I have no idea how you could say the New York Yankees are number one, considering the fact they lost series to the Mets. They turned around. They can't beat the Houston Astros. They have the Astros at three. The Astros, in my opinion, are the best team in the American League. And for the moment, until the Padres fully come to life, the Dodgers are the best team in baseball. The Yankees are number three, if not number four, behind the Mets.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. And a couple of notes I wanted to add from what you said. First of all, with the Dodgers. Now, I feel like the Dodgers were hesitant this year because the trade deadline usually doesn't help them that much, with the exception of Trey Turner, who they ended up signing long term. Of course, Max Scherzer couldn't even pitch in the biggest game of the season for them last year. Manny Machado was decent when they got him as a rental, but he wasn't a huge difference maker. They weren't able to keep him. The Dodgers are more of a winter meetings team. They are more of making their moves in December and January and setting themselves up for the full 162 games. So the fact that they only went for Joey Gallo doesn't really concern me. And like you said, they're the best team in baseball right now. They've won 23 of their last 28 games. They're calling up someone literally with the last name Outman, and he's not making outs. He's got he started his career 5 for 7. They've got everything covered right now. The big question is, can they carry that into the postseason? Now with the Padres, I will say, I think this is different from teams past with them. Number one, you finally have a capable manager in San Diego. Bob Melvin has taken scrap heap teams in Oakland to 95, 100 wins and on decent postseason runs. I know they haven't gone too deep in the postseason before, but he also did not have Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Manny Machado in the same lineup. He had Matt Chapman and Matt Olson. This is a massive difference, and you've got a great manager in that. And you talked about the experience level that the Dodgers have. Well, the Padres just brought in a lot of players with postseason experience. Josh Bell's been around for a while. Early in his career, the Pittsburgh made a couple of playoff runs. Juan Soto won a World Series 3 years ago. Josh Hader, while he hasn't been great in the playoffs before, has postseason experience in those high leverage situations. So I think that complementing some other experience in the roster, like Will Myers, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr. Let's not forget the Padres 2 years ago. I know it was the 60-game season, but they made a deep playoff run and really challenged the Dodgers that year in the postseason. I know that year's an outlier, but still it was only 2 years ago. And they have a better pitching staff now. I think this might be the year it all comes together. The problem for them, though, is that the way the postseason is right now, they'd have to play a 3-game series in Atlanta. And I don't know if you'd be able to win that. So as good as the Padres are, they're in the worst possible situation playoff-wise. But I want to talk a little more about the Yankees. And, I something I like that the Mets have done this year is how they structure their lineup. And I still don't like the way Aaron Boone structures the Yankees lineup. The Mets have the bottom and the top. Obviously, having a DH and having a 9-man order where 9 goes right to 1 helps a lot now in the National League. But Buck Showalter has done a great job setting up the on-base guys together. He bats Jeff McNeil low in the order, Luis Guillorme. Even Tomas Nido does pretty well with getting on base. You loop it up to Nimmo and Marte. You can string something together at 1 and 2, and then you have your 2 power hitters, Lindor and Alonso, right there to clear the bases. That's a great setup. The Yankees, I feel, are very weird. I still don't like the philosophy of your power hitter, your best power hitter, batting second in the order. I think that's idiotic. The power hitter should be batting third and fourth.
Forget about that. The Yankees, I believe it was 2 games ago. Yesterday, I know a lot of people were mad about the lineup, but 2 days ago, Anthony Rizzo was leading off for the New York Yankees. In what world should a 220 hitter, not named Carlos Santana, because of course you remember when Carlos Santana was on the Indians, he turned around and had a very high walk rate, which was a big reason why he was one of the most unorthodox leadoff hitters in baseball. But there is no reason Anthony Rizzo should be leading off the game for the New York Yankees. Not saying that he shouldn't be high in the lineup, but there is no reason when you have a DJ LeMahieu in the lineup. I'd even argue Gleyber Torres, even though he's a little bit cold late, batting around a 250. At least he's more bat on ball than Anthony Rizzo has been. That's like putting Giancarlo Stanton up in the leadoff spot. It makes absolutely no sense to me at all in what Aaron Boone does and what he thinks. And yeah, I'm okay for mixing up the lineup, but I also want to put it like this, Eddie. It goes back to a point of coaching philosophy. Buck Showalter likes playing the statistics and likes setting up himself for the top of the lineup, hence why you get to see a lot of on-base guys towards the bottom. If I were to draw a dream lineup for the New York Yankees, okay, I personally think you want your guys to get on base the most up on top of that lineup. And it's as simple as that. And I'm a big advocate for batting average. I talk about it all the time here on Sports Speak. If I were to draw a lineup up for the New York Yankees, listen, I personally don't mind Aaron Judge being in the 2 hole. Would I bat him in the 2 hole? Probably not, but it's more of the capability of him drawing a walk. DJ LeMahieu will always, in my opinion, be the Yankees' leadoff hitter. And I want no one else different up in that spot. I know he's had his struggles, but when you see when he gets runners in scoring position from the bottom half of the lineup going, DJ gets going, and his bat of late, especially, I really do think he can get back to 300. He'd be my one. Number two, this is where I would put Andrew Benintendi. You want to talk about the Yankees splitting righty lefties up? Andrew Benintendi has a walk drawing capability. That's the one perk. While he hasn't hit well in the past, granted this season's statistics, I give him that opportunity in the 2 hole. Then that's where I'd go to Aaron Judge. Put him in the 3 spot. You get runners on first and second, big swing capability. You want to back it up one more? Let's go to Giancarlo Stanton when he's healthy. Put him in a cleanup spot. Then we break it up, go to Anthony Rizzo in the 5. Now, how do you break up the rest of the lineup? It's simple. You could turn around. You could put Jose Trevino in the 6th spot if that's what you want to do. Or if you want to break up the lefty, you could put Aaron Hicks there. At some point in 7, 8, 9, though, you want your on-base guys like Trevino, like IKF. In my opinion, I like to see IKF higher up in the lineup, around that 6 or the 7 spot. But I also don't mind Isaiah Kiner-Falefa batting in the 9 hole because it creates an opportunity for the Yankees to turn back to the top of the order, considering he's so good being bat on ball. The big thing is, and this goes back to Buck, your point about Buck Showalter. Buck Showalter is so good at developing lineups because there's always a threat in his lineup, if that makes sense. There's always opportunity. There's no easy out. And I'm not saying that there's, for example, the Yankees compared to the Mets have big swing opportunities for most of that lineup, but that doesn't make them a threat 1 through 9. What makes the Mets a threat 1 through 9 is, oh, well, I started at the top of the lineup. I have, Starling Marte. Well, oh, now I got to face a powerful Francisco Lindor, and I've got to turn around as well as face a Pete Alonso. Oh, well, all right, I got through them, but now I face a bunch of guys like Jeff McNeil that gets on base on a frequent basis. There is no easy out in the Mets lineup, and I'm not saying the Yankees have an easy out. Of course, when they played Joey Gallo before trading him, he was easy out. Now you'll argue Aaron Hicks is the easy out for the New York Yankees. But the fact of the matter is the Yankees lineup isn't spread enough for production. And that's the big problem why they're not finding offense here in the second half.
Yeah, and my contention about Judge is just if you structure the lineup the way you said and you have IKF 9 or something like that, I just want a situation, if I'm a Yankee fan, that Aaron Judge is coming up with runners on base. Aaron Judge is having a historic year that we haven't seen from a power hitter since the 1990s. And he's got to be able to use that to help the team. Solo home runs from Aaron Judge will only get you so far. I know it won them a game against Kansas City last week, but still, when you're going deep into the season and you're going to be playing against teams like the Astros and the Blue Jays who are going to score runs no matter who's on the mound for the Yankees, you need Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo to be coming up with runners on base so they can drive in multiple runs if they hit a home run. The Yankees frequently hit home runs. You've got to try to set that up. But I'm going to leave it at that with the baseball and transition to the NFL. Because Hall of Fame game is tonight. The Jaguars face off with the Las Vegas Raiders. Not sure who we're actually going to see on the field. Of course, first preseason game. Maybe you get a series with the regulars. Maybe we'll see Devontae Adams on a Raiders uniform for the first time. I doubt it.
I honestly think I highly doubt you will see any starters in a game here tonight for either team in terms of the quarterback position and the receiving positions. I think it's just way too risky to turn around and play, might I add, a meaningless game. Because remember, these guys get four games, in the preseason. And while, yeah, you would think it's an extra opportunity, I think this is where it typically is for the Hall of Fame game where you're going to see more and more of your third stringers getting opportunities.
The only thing I think maybe Trevor Lawrence gets a series because, he's been working with Doug Peterson these last couple of weeks in camp, and he's trying to rebound after a very disappointing rookie year. I think maybe we'll see Trevor Lawrence for a series, but regardless, it's exciting to see the NFL back. But let's finish the trilogy of our Giants-Eagles debate because it got a little crazy last episode. Both of us were saying things that were completely inaccurate about the schedules. So now let's actually pull up the schedules and go through them and figure out statistically who's going to be better. And let's start with the team that I think is going to be worse, and that's the New York Giants. Now, Giants start their regular season September the 11th on the road against the Tennessee Titans. I don't see them winning that game.
That's a winnable game. I'm not saying they're going to win, but it's a winnable game.
All right. I'm putting them down as 0-1.
It's going to be one-dimensional with Ryan Tannehill. One-dimensional. All you can do is hand off the ball to Derrick Henry. And the Giants, the one thing that I've noticed they are really emphasizing in this preseason, focusing on stopping the run. You have to remember, this defense for the Giants was not the problem. It was the offense. And the fact of the matter is, Tennessee has a decent defense. It's not Baltimore. It's not even Green Bay. I feel like Tennessee's regressed. They haven't made any big moves. They've traded away their pieces. They're stepping down. Again, my point about the Giants, a lot of what-if teams throughout the season. Not as much compared to the Eagles. The Eagles have, in my opinion, 50-50 games. But continue on.
All right. So I've got the Giants. Personally, I've got the Giants dropping that first game, but I see them winning week 2. I think they'll beat the Panthers at home. I think the Giants defense can give Baker or whoever's at quarterback for Carolina fits. Week 3, they're at home on Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. I don't care that the Giants are home. I don't care.
Listen, my argument with this had nothing to do with division games because the fact of the matter is, listen, the division, the NFC East, what we've proven now over the last 4 or 5 seasons in particular, unpredictable. I mean, unpredictable. You can't predict a game at all. Listen, the Giants can turn around. They could beat the Cowboys. They could. I'm not saying they're going to, but they could beat the Cowboys. And then they'll turn around the next game and they'll get blown up by 40 points. That's just how unpredictable the NFC East has been practically, which is why you can't look at those games and say, they don't have a chance. And it's, for the record, it's not just the NFC East. Every division game, every team has a chance, unfortunately, because of how unpredictable. I mean, think about it. The Browns, when they went 0-16, almost had chances of beating their own divisional opponents in multiple times that season.
All right, so I've got the Giants at 1-2. The Bears, I think this could be a close game, but I think the Giants are better than the Chicago Bears.
I've got them at 3-1 at that point.
All right, you've got them at 3.
I have them losing to the Cowboys.
Yeah, you've got them at 3-1. I've got them at 2-2. 5th game, they face Mr. Psychedelic himself, Aaron Rodgers. That's going to be
in London. Can't forget about
in London.
I'm not saying they don't have a chance. They're losing to Aaron Rodgers, but it's in London. And if Aaron Rodgers plays in London like he plays in Florida, we could have a chance. Could, but that's asking for a lot. And but also not to argue on the Giants side, but I'll argue the contrary on this. Okay. What happens if we get to week 5 and Aaron Rodgers, not himself, but has a receiver injury? What happens if Allen Lazard's hurt? What happens if, one of the young and up-and-coming receivers that he's trying to develop the connection with gets hurt? Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. He can make receivers good. Do not get me wrong to that standard. But the one thing I'm worried about the Packers, and this has nothing to do with this game just in general, I want to see them go on a Super Bowl run, but I'm so worried about receiver depth and really overall their offensive line depth as well of being healthy that I just don't know for the big picture for Aaron Rodgers of, again, the Giants could potentially come into that game if there's injuries. It's not who you play, it's what they have when you play them and how they're doing.
Fair enough, but let's also not forget what happened last year on Thursday Night Football against the Cardinals. I know the Cardinals collapsed, but the Packers had all their receivers basically hurt on the COVID list, and Aaron Rodgers was still able to power through and win that game against the team who statistically was the best team in the NFC at that point. So in the end, I don't think it really matters. Giants are losing in London to the Packers. So you've got them at 3-2. I've got them at 2-3. Then they play the Ravens. Now, as long as Lamar Jackson is healthy, I know this
I've got a loss in that game.
Yeah.
That's where, but remember, some motivation as well. Defensive coordinator for the New York Giants, that's where he was most previously. And they'll know each other defensively very, very well in that game, which is going to be very interesting. And really, on the end, Daboll is very familiar having fits with Baltimore.
All right. Now, this is where things are going to get feisty here. Okay. So I've got them at 2-4 at this point. You've got them at 3-3. Then they've got this 4-game stretch where if they want any chance, they got to win all 4 of these games. And I don't think they're winning all 4 of these games. I do think they can beat Jacksonville, though I think it will be closer than people think because Doug Peterson has played well against the Giants before as the coach, and Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to have a better year, but I think the Giants will beat the Jaguars. So the Giants will move to 3-4. I know you think they're going to beat the Jaguars.
That's a win. That's a win.
All right. So 4-3, 3-4. Seattle, I don't trust Drew Lock. I think the Giants.
I think that's a win as well. I do think that's a win. That team's on a regression, not just because they lost Russell Wilson, but let's be honest. I don't even know who could protect Drew Lock on that team at this point.
All right. So you got them at 5-3. I got them at 4-4. Now here we go. The Giants play the Texans on November 13th. I have the Texans because I have a lot of faith in Davis Mills. I liked him this year. He came into a really dysfunctional situation with the Texans with everything going on in Deshaun Watson, a lack of targets and weapons, and he looked pretty good in the second half of the season. And a team that was in a coaching transitional phase. I like Houston as a sneaky team to get 7-8 wins this season. So I think the Giants are due for a letdown here. So I've got them falling to 4-5 and losing to the Texans.
Now, while your point is legitimate, because again, it's very hard to win 4 in a row in the NFL, I still have them winning this game. You mentioned dysfunctional. There's nothing more dysfunctional than the Houston Texans. And listen, that team, again, not only got worse, obviously, by trading Deshaun Watson. And for the record, if it was a Deshaun Watson-led Houston Texans, I would say absolutely the Giants are losing that game. But the fact of the matter is that, again, they haven't really improved themselves in the receiving core and on the offensive end. And again, Davis Mills looks good. He looks like that of the rookie class outside, of course, Mac Jones. He looks like he has the most potential of everyone that went under the radar. But I just don't know if Houston is going to be good enough to even win 5-6 games this year.
All right, so I've got them at 4-5. You've got them at 6-3. Then they face Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions, who I still think are going to be kind of bad this year. So I'll give the Giants this win. I'll have them.
Sorry, Zoe. I have the Giants winning that one as well.
Yeah, I've got them at 5-5 through 10 games. I'm being nice. Then is when this is going to get fun when they play the NFC East. So
I'm at 7-3 right now. I think
they're at 7-3. So if the Giants start 7-3. They're going to be feeling really good. But then here we go. Jerry World on Thanksgiving. That's going to be ugly.
That's a lot. Right. I think we're getting swept by the Cowboys. And I think that's fair. I think the Cowboys are the best team in the NFC East. And that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's being realistic. But again, unpredictable division game. Never know. I mean, the Cowboys, Thanksgiving-wise, history-wise, against the Giants hasn't done well. But last time the Giants played a Thanksgiving game, I want to say it was, the 1950s? Something like that. So the Giants haven't played in Thanksgiving in a very, very long time.
All right, 7-4, 5-6. The Commanders. Well, we'll get to it. I think they're going to split the series with the Commanders. I think they'll win the home game. They'll win the home game on December 4th. So that'll get them to 6-6. I assume you have them beating Washington.
I have them beating the Commanders. I have them sweeping the Commanders this year. So
8-4, 6-6. Then first meeting with the Eagles. Now, of course, I think the Eagles are better than the Giants, and I don't think Jalen Rieger is going to be in a situation where he has to catch the game-winning touchdown.
So this is the first meeting for the Giants, home or away?
This one is in East Rutherford.
So I have them taking the home game. I have them losing the Week 18 game.
Right. So you have them at 9. You have the Giants at 9-4 right now. I've got them at 6-7. Then December 18th, they play the Commanders. Now I said this. I think they're going to split it. They always have a bad performance against Washington every year. So I've got them losing this one and dropping to 6-8. And you said you have them sweeping the Commanders.
10-4.
10. All right. Then in Minnesota on New Year's Eve, this is a 1:00 game. So this is not a primetime game. So that means Kirk Cousins is going to play well. So I think the Vikings at this point I've got the Giants at 6-8. The Vikings are going to have more to play for. So I think they'll be motivated and they'll beat the Giants. This game is also at US Bank Stadium. So I got the Giants dropping to 6-9.
I'm going to say this is going to be a loss, but also, again, and I mentioned this on Twitter, it comes down to what do we see for the Minnesota Vikings? Because if they fall flat like they did last season, I don't know if this team's going to last, especially with Kirk Cousins under center. And listen, while Dalvin Cook is an absolute superstar, as a running back, the fact of the matter is, it's been a little bit flat in Minnesota. And I need to see something motivational wise at the start of the season to truly believe that this team is going to be something in the NFC North, because even with Aaron Rodgers losing receivers, I still think they're the team to beat right now without a doubt in that division.
All right, so 2 weeks to go. The Giants face the Indianapolis Colts on New Year's Day. That's their last home game. What do you have?
I have this as a win. I have this, and the only reason why is that I truly believe Matt Ryan is a good quarterback. However, again, you get to the late in the season portion for the Colts, and it's the question of how is Matt Ryan doing in that late portion of the season. And again, I still can't trust the offense fully. Matt Ryan, I can trust. I can trust he's going to throw 3,000, 4,000 yards this year, throw 20-something touchdowns. That's not my problem. My problem is the receiving core for the Colts. I don't know if the receiving core for the Colts, even at this point late in the season with injuries and so on, can hold up. And of course, the Giants will have injuries at that point in the season too. But I just don't know if they, compared to the Giants defense, can hold up. And for the record, I think it's going to be like around a 3-point game. It's going to be close, but I have the Giants edging them out in that.
You know what? I'll be nice one more time. I think that could be a close game, and maybe the last home game, the Giants will be motivated. They'll give away the medium sodas. So I'll give them the win over Indianapolis.
I heard it's going to be a large this year.
It's going to be a large. All right. So I've got them at 7-9. You've got them at 11-5. Then the big showdown in Philly last week of the season. How do you have that one?
And I said, this is where I said they were splitting, and I had them losing in week 18.
Okay. So you have the Giants finishing at 11-6. You have a team quarterbacked by Daniel Jones of Duke University finishing 11-6. And I've got them at 7-10. So our Zoom is about to run out, so I'm going to start a new one, and then we're going to go through the Eagles schedule. So stay with us. Of course, if you're on Spotify, go listen to part 2 now. That's where we'll be breaking down the Eagles schedule. But this is Sports Speak. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, welcome back to Sports Speak, episode 106. Eddie Kalegi with Tim Moore. If you haven't checked out part 1, if you're on Spotify, you can go back, check that out. Remember, all episodes available on Spotify and YouTube. And YouTube, it's put all together. But check out part 1. We rated some teams from the MLB Trade Deadline and went through the Giants schedule. And for the Giants, of course, we've had this debate going for almost a month after Tim had the audacity to say on our in-person episode 3 episodes ago that the Giants are about even with the Eagles, and he has them tied for second in his mind in the best teams in the NFC East. He's got the Giants going 11-6. I've got them 7-10. So let's go to the city of brotherly love and the Philadelphia Eagles, who made the playoffs last year and have made positive additions to their team since. We'll start week 1 on the road against Dan Campbell and the Lions. I think the Eagles will take care of business just like they did in week 1 against the Falcons last year. You in agreement on that? They're going to be 1-0?
No, agreed.
All right. Now we've got week 2. They face Kirk Cousins. Now, there is one factor here that stands out, and I'm glad because I mentioned this when the Giants were playing the Vikings. That was a 1:00 game, and Kirk Cousins does well in those situations. The Eagles play the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football in week 2, and the game is also at the Link. So I think Kirk Cousins in the spotlight is not going to shine, and the Eagles will do enough and get to 2-0.
See, again, for me, this is a little bit 50-50. Depends on what we see from Minnesota, in my opinion, in week 1. But I'll give Philadelphia a win in this scenario. I'm going to have them at 2-0.
Week 3 in Washington. First game against Carson Wentz. Now, a lot of Eagles fans think the Eagles are just going to completely decimate Washington both times they play Carson Wentz. I think the first meeting is going to be very close. I think the Commanders are going to get off to a good start. I think Carson Wentz is going to be motivated against his former team. I think he's going to play a good game, but I still don't think it's going to be enough and I think the Eagles get to 3-0.
Okay, that's fair. I'd say 3-0 to start.
All right. Then they play the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags, this is another reunion. They play against Doug Peterson. And I have said I think the Jaguars are going to be better this year, but the game's in Philly. And I think the Eagles are going to get off to a really good start to this season. They take this one and get to 4-0.
Agreed. 4-0 to start.
Week 5, they go to Arizona to face Kyler Murray, who is going to be finishing his independent study and getting ready to go for the Cardinals. And
this is double XP weekend on Call of Duty, though. I don't know if you saw that absolutely outrageous statistic on Twitter. I thought that was funny. But is it a double XP weekend in Call of Duty? I hope so. Because that may give the Eagles a little bit of a better shot.
It could, but I don't think it really matters because I think the Eagles are going to take care of business. I think we're done with the Cardinals and this whole thing that they start 7-1, 8-0 every year. I don't think they're getting to that point this year. And if you don't have Hollywood Brown, potentially, this Cardinals team suddenly becomes very, very vulnerable. And I think the Eagles are going to be able to take care of this and get to 5-0 to start the season.
I have them losing to Arizona. I think the Cardinals are not as bad as even without DeAndre Hopkins. Granted, last year, a little bit different. No really big targets outside of Hopkins. But I think this offense will be okay this season.
So next meeting is Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys. That will be the Eagles' first loss of the season. They're not putting up a fight with Dallas. I'm arguing the Eagles are better than the Giants and will probably make the playoffs. I'm not making the argument that the Eagles are there with the Cowboys like some other people on TV might be saying. Because as long as Dak Prescott is healthy, the Cowboys are a better team than the Eagles, and their defense is better than the Eagles straight up. So I've got that one as a win for Dallas, a loss for Philly. I assume you're in agreement on that.
In agreement. So that's, oh goodness.
What is it? You got them at 4-2. I've got them at 5-1. Then they have a bye week and Halloween weekend. They're home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have no idea who the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers will be this season. Could it be Mason Rudolph? Could it be Kenny Pickett? I don't think that's going to matter because I think the Eagles are going to be able to tear through and hold the Steelers down. I think their defense is going to do enough regardless of who's the quarterback, and the game is at the link. So I got Philly going to 6-1.
See, this is where I gave you a break in the Minnesota game. This is where I have you losing to Pittsburgh. I think, again, what if? Who's quarterback? I think it's going to be Kenny Pickett. To me, it makes no sense to put Mason Rudolph under center and risk him getting another helmet swung at him from, Myles Garrett. But needless to say, I think that, the run game still very, very strong for Pittsburgh. And by the way, Najee Harris looks really good coming into this year. So I'm eager to see what Najee does this year for Pittsburgh as well.
Now, I'm not going to be hypocritical for this next game. It's a quick turnaround on a Thursday in Houston. And I talked about it with the Giants. I think the Texans are a sneaky team this year, and I think Davis Mills has a high potential. This game is also on the road. The Eagles tend to slip up when they play on Thursday Night Football. I think that's going to happen again. I think this is going to be their first bad loss of the year. So I've got the Eagles dropping this one to the Texans to drop to 6-2.
I have them winning. I think they can beat the Texans.
So you've got them 4-3. I've got them 6-2.
I know 5-3.
5-3, 6-2. Then 10th game of the season is against the Washington Commanders. As I said, if they're going to beat them in Washington, they're certainly going to beat them at home in Philly. This is also another night game. The Eagles have a lot of primetime games this season for some reason. This is already their 4th night game on November 14th, and they have another one to go. But they're going to win this one over Washington, which will get them to 7-3, which already equals the win total that I had the Giants getting, and there's still 7 games left in the season. So I've got the Eagles at 7-3 winning against Washington.
And I have the Eagles winning that game as well. I think they're going to end up sweeping Washington with flying colors. I think every game will be at most 2 possessions.
All right, 7-3, and you're at 6-4.
Want to say, no, I was just 5-3, so I'm 6-3.
So yeah, I'm 7-2. I'm bad at math today.
Yeah,
I'm at 7-2. You're at 6-3. Eagles then play on the road against Matt Ryan and the Colts. This is a tough one. This is when the Eagles have probably their most difficult stretch of the season. Now, Tim made it seem like the Eagles were playing the Buccaneers and the Rams every single week on last week's episode because he said they have such a difficult schedule. This is the brunt of the schedule, in my opinion. They play 3 games against Indianapolis, Green Bay, and Tennessee over a stretch around Thanksgiving. This is where they could trip up a little bit, but as long as they don't drop all three, I feel good about them going to the postseason. And I think they're going to make it through without losing all three. In fact, I think this is the one they're actually going to grab, even though it's the only one on the road. I think they can take care of business against Matt Ryan and the Colts in Indy. So I've got the Eagles moving to 8-2.
I have them winning against the Colts as well. I think that's a fair analysis to this point.
Okay, so you got them at 7-3. I got them at 8-2. Then the Eagles play the Packers. They're not beating the Packers. It's another primetime game. Green Bay is going to play well, even if the game's in Philly. Even though Jalen Hurts played well against the Packers in only his second career start when he played against Green Bay in a 4:00 game on CBS, he did really good. But I don't think that's going to be enough. Eagles drop to 8-3.
I agree. I think the Packers, again, are the dominant force in the NFC. That's not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the Los Angeles Rams. And again, I think they are far more superior, in my opinion, even without receivers, than any team in the NFC East right now.
So 8-3, 7-4. I already have the Eagles winning more games than the Giants, but then we get to the Titans. I think this will be another loss for Philadelphia, even though it's at home. I still think Tennessee is a very high potential team. I think they'll be able to power through against the Eagles. The Eagles front seven still has some gaps, and I think Derrick Henry is going to exploit those. As long as Henry's healthy, Eagles fall to 8-4.
That's a 50-50 game for me because, again, I still feel having the Giants beat them, but I feel like the Giants have a better rush defense than Philadelphia has at the moment. But I still really do think Philadelphia could beat Tennessee. So I'm going to go with Philly over Tennessee. But I'm going to say it's going to be a one-possession game down to a field goal.
So see, you love the Eagles just like me. We both have them at 8-4 through 12 games. But now I know that's immediately going to change because on December 11th, the Eagles play in New Jersey against the Giants, and I've got them winning that game.
I said the Giants were winning this first game at home, so that I have them losing, so they're now 8-5.
So they're 8-5. I've got them at 9-4. Then they play on the road against Chicago December 18th. The Bears can't.
That's a win.
Yeah, that's a win.
I honestly think by that point in the season, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I truly do think Justin Fields is going to get benched. I don't understand the hype for Justin Fields. He has no help from a receiving core. That the offensive line is still a mess, but I really don't think he's just simply that good of a quarterback. And at some point, someone's going to have to believe at that point in the season. I don't even see him throwing for 3,000 yards this year.
10-4 versus 9-5. 3 games left for the Eagles. Then they play in Jerry World on Christmas Eve. I think this game is going to be closer than people think. I know the Eagles played really bad in Jerry World these last 2 years, but going to Dallas, this game's probably going to have a lot of playoff implications on the line. I think the Eagles are going to play well to start it off. I think their defense is going to be able to shut down Zeke and Tony Pollard, but I think Dak is just going to be too strong. So I've got Dallas taking down the Eagles and dropping Philly to 10-5.
I've got Dallas beating the Eagles. And I think also, honestly, I think we should probably look at the Cowboys schedule now that I'm thinking about it, because the Cowboys are going to have a lot more of a tougher schedule, which makes it interesting because right now to this point, obviously my prediction of a higher record for the Giants and the Eagles kind of be maybe a little bit concerned for Dallas, because while I still feel they're the better team in the NFC East, a couple harder opponents, they may be coming down to a tiebreaker week 18.
All right, then we're going to have to go to Cowboys after this, because if you make the argument that the Giants are going to have the same record as the Dallas Cowboys, I don't even know what I'm going to say to you. So Cowboys are Eagles are at 10-5 for me, 9-6 for you. 2 weeks to go. New Year's Eve, they play the New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston is a good quarterback and all, but I think the Eagles are going to win this one at home and get to 11-5 on the season.
I have a loss. I think Jameis Winston and the Saints are a lot better than what a lot of people are going to put them out to be. Listen, let's not underrate what that team did last season until Jameis Winston got hurt. I truthfully do believe the Saints offense has the capability of being explosive. Of course, it lies back on, can that defense be complementary? They're always good at being a top 10 defensive football team, but nothing that can ever make those big stops. They only really did that when Teddy Bridgewater was under center for a little bit, when he didn't play much offense for them. But I really do think the Saints have a good quarterback under center, and Winston is far changed. He just needs to be healthy throughout an entire season.
And then the last game, the Eagles-Giants matchup in Philly. I believe we both have the Eagles winning that one. Yep. So That means I've got the Eagles going 12-5 this season.
And
Yet
I
Tim has the
have
Eagles being worse than the Giants now. You don't even have them even. You have the Giants finishing ahead of the Eagles. You have the Eagles at 10-7 for some bizarre reason. Okay. I'm not even that mad about the 10-7. It's the fact that the Giants are 11-6. But now I've got to go to the Cowboys schedule because I got to make sure that you don't go crazy on me and say that the Cowboys are going to fall to the Giants and the Giants are going to win the NFC East. So let's go to this. Cowboys will start the season against Tampa Bay on Sunday Night Football in week 1.
I'm going to say a loss only because Tom Brady, prime time. I mean, we saw what he did week 1 last year. I think it's without a doubt, even without Rob Gronkowski at this point for Tom Brady makes any receiver look good, and that team's only getting more and more stacked in the receiver position. So I'm going to go Buccaneers week 1.
Yeah, first week out of the brief retirement for Tom Brady. I think the Cowboys fall to 0-1. Week 2, they played the defending AFC champs. I like Dallas. One of the things that the Cowboys needed to improve upon was playing out of conference. They had some really disappointing performances against the AFC West, especially that game where they were shut out by the Broncos until the final 5 minutes of the game at home. They were down 30-0 against Denver with 5 minutes left in Jerry World. I think they're going to focus on those games and try to play the best they can against the AFC North. And this might be their biggest test. And being at home in Jerry World, they're not going to drop back-to-back games at home to open the season. So I think Dallas will get to 1-1 and beat Cincinnati.
Yeah, listen, the Bengals may have made the Super Bowl last year, but I truly can't comprehend still to this point, other than the fact that, Joe Burrow was really good at throwing one-on-one balls throughout the season, that this team was capable of getting to the extent it did. I'm not saying that they're not a good football team, but I just don't see them going back to the Super Bowl this season. While their team is slowly getting better, it's more of, I really don't think they're the best team in the AFC. I don't even think they're even close to the conversation, if I'm being quite frankly honest. So I agree. I have the Cowboys surprise them. And also another one where I'll say I think it's going to come down to a game-winning field goal in a closing moments of the fourth.
Then a couple of very winnable games. The Cowboys play at the Giants and then home against the Commanders. I assume we both have those as wins for Dallas.
So this is also an interesting point that I was listening to as well that's very brought up. Now, of course, let's make the assumption that the Cowboys started 0-2, which right now, of course, we have them at 1-1. But I feel if the Cowboys started 0-2, this would start a high horse, playing New York, obviously, in the first game where we both have them losing, where all of a sudden Dallas will start getting a hot streak. But assuming based upon the fact that we haven't beaten Cincinnati, I haven't beaten New York, I just don't know if that hot streak is going to continue fully beyond the next few weeks.
All right. So do you have them beating Washington too in week 4?
I have them beating Washington. I think Washington's not going to win a single division game this year. And I know that sounds insane, but I really just don't see, with all the controversy going on, and that team's really in full dysfunction. I understand Carson Wentz is under center, and he's not that bad of an option, but everything is falling apart in Washington. They need to figure something out, and they need change. Everyone's old for the most part in the defense, and I'm tired of hearing, it's a solid defense, solid defense. If you're a solid enough defense, even with the youth you have in the defensive line, you're going to do something dominant at some point. And Washington has just been unable to do that compared to other teams in the NFC East.
October 9th, they play at SoFi Stadium against the reigning Super Bowl champs. I chalk this one up as a loss for Dallas in LA. That would drop them to 3-2.
I would say that's a loss as well, 3-2.
Then they play at the Eagles. I've got Dallas winning that one. As I said, they're going to sweep the Eagles and the Giants. So we both have them at 4-2 at this point. Then they have 2 very easy games that they cannot afford to lose. If they lose either one of these games at home, media is going to be going crazy the next Monday. They play at home back-to-back weeks against Detroit and Chicago. You have to win both of those games, and I think they will. I think they'll take care of business against both the Lions and the Bears to get to 6-2. Are you in agreement on that?
Agreed 100%. The only one that's rooting against them, I think, at this point is Stephen A. Smith.
Then they have their bye week, and then they play the Green Bay Packers. This is the game that I think might make me stray away from you because they have a bye week. They're going to be coming back to play at Lambeau. I think this could be a shocker, and Dallas, who have had so much trouble against the Packers in both the regular season and the postseason in seasons past. I think they're going to go into Lambeau and steal this one in prime time and get to 7-2. Coming off the bye week, that extra rest for Dak and Zeke, I think that's going to make all the difference. I think Trayvon Diggs is going to pick off Aaron Rodgers at least once, and I think Dallas is going to win by one possession over Green Bay.
Well, first off, Des Bryant's catch was a catch. It should not have been an incompletion. But also, I still have the Green Bay Packers beating in, again, what's going to be a showdown over the Dallas Cowboys. I still think the Packers are going to win 12, 13 games this year. I feel like you can't underrate Aaron Rodgers. He's back-to-back MVPs now. He's playing almost like he's still in the prime of his career, even though he's on the back half. So I think the Packers, again, you can't underrate them. And I know that sounds like, whatever, the Cowboys, they're going to play a good competitive game. But Aaron Rodgers is just better than Dak Prescott. It's that simply put. It's going to be a quarterback duel.
I also think Mike McCarthy is going to be very motivated to win a game in Green Bay. So that's what I like. So now we're different. I've got them at 7-2. You've got them at 6-3. But as I just said, Mike McCarthy is the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So they're due for at least one bad loss during the season. And it's going to come the next week when they're still on the road against an NFC North opponent. They play the Minnesota Vikings on November 20th. They were 3-0 against the North. That will change. They will drop this one at US Bank Stadium. So it'll balance out. They'll beat the Packers, but lose to Minnesota and come back down to 7-3.
I have them beating Minnesota. I think their offense is far more superior than what Kirk Cousins can provide.
So it's 7-3 for both of us. Then they play the Giants on Thanksgiving. We've already analyzed that game. Think it'll be close. The Giants will be motivated. They haven't played on Thanksgiving in over 50 years, but the Cowboys will pull it out. So we've got them at 8-3 through 11. Then they play the Indianapolis Colts. This is one that I'm tossing and turning back and forth about. It's a night game, an 8:00 game. This seems like it could be one of those classics. We had so many good Sunday and Monday night football games last year, which really stretched out the NFL week and made last year's NFL season probably the most compelling that I've ever watched. I think this is going to be another one of those that's really close. And I think the Colts with Matt Ryan might sneak out of Jerry World with a win here. I'm torn about it, but I think Indianapolis in a late game situation, maybe Jonathan Taylor breaks through that Cowboys defense, gets past Micah Parsons, gets into the end zone for a game-winning touchdown, and Dallas falls to 7-4.
I'm going to take Dallas winning this game. I've pretty much picked the Eagles and the Giants to beat them, so I think chronologically speaking, I think Dallas can get it done.
All right, so there's 5 weeks left. I've got them at 8-4 at this point. You've actually got them at 9-3, so you've got them even better than me. Then they play the Texans at home. I've hyped up the Texans again, beating both the Eagles and the Giants. They're not going to win in Jerry World in the Texan rivalry. So the Dallas Cowboys get to 9-4 with that win. Do you have them beating the Texans?
Yep.
All right, so you got them at 10-3. Then they go to Jacksonville. Cowboys are not losing to the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are going to improve this year. Doug Peterson has coached well against Dallas before, but I think Dallas takes care of business in that game and gets to 10-4.
And I agree. They're going to go to 11-3.
Christmas Eve against the Eagles. I've got them winning that one. So then I've got them at 11-4, and you've got them at 12-3.
Correct. So now they won the division at this point, correct? I have the Giants 11-6 and the Eagles 10-7.
Yes, they have won this division. Now, let me just say, if we somehow reach a situation where 3 NFC East teams get double-digit wins, that's going to be kind of crazy. And I know our predictions are probably going to go south at some point. Somebody's going to get hurt. One of these teams is going to fall apart, and then we'll still have like a 10-7 team winning the NFC East. But right now, it's okay to dream a little. So you've got them at 12-3. I've got them at 11-4. 2 weeks to go. In Tennessee, I like them beating the Titans. I think they can. That's going to be a big game. That's a big game. It's a night game as well. It's, I believe, it's the last Thursday night football game of the year. I think the Cowboys are going to do just enough to win that game, get to 12-4, and that win for me will clinch them the NFC East.
See, it's tough for me in this regard because I feel like I gave the Giants, of course, and the Eagles to win over Tennessee, but I feel like, and you always mentioned for Mike McCarthy, there's always that one game at this point in the season. They have a division lead. It's late in the season. I actually have them losing this game to Tennessee. I think Derrick Henry's going to end up running for 250 yards straight through them. And again, it's prime time. Prime time Derrick Henry is a scary, scary opponent. So I think Tennessee barely edges out Dallas in this one.
And then last game, we got them beating Washington. So that means we both have Dallas at 13-4. So just to recap where we have the NFC East looking, I'll start with Tim. He's got the Cowboys winning the division at 13-4. He's got the Giants finishing in second and somehow winning 11 games in 2022. And he has the Eagles at 10-7 and Washington irrelevant. For me, I've got the Cowboys winning by just one game over the Philadelphia Eagles, who will be 12-5. The Giants are not that good. They're going to be 7-10, but still better than Washington, who once again are irrelevant. So I'm glad we did that. We finally hashed it out. We've got the numbers set in stone, so we can call each other out later in the season when these predictions go south. But that's going to wrap up this episode of Sports Speak. Stay tuned for next week. We'll definitely have some more MLB baseball to talk about. NFL as well. Preseason games starting tonight with the Hall of Fame game. More to come throughout the month of August. So stay tuned for that. But until next time, I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Signing off of Sports Speak. We hope you have a great rest of your week.